There's been weeks of speculation about whether the Tokyo Games would go ahead. The coronavirus pandemic that's caused chaos the world over made the event increasingly unlikely. Now Japan's Prime Minister says Tokyo 2020 will be held in 2021.
As the host of the Tokyo Olympics, taking into consideration the current situation for the athletes of the world, for them to be able to compete in the best environment, and also for the Games to be one in which it is safe and worry-free for spectators, I asked if it would be possible to consider postponing the Games for approximately 1 year.
This week had seen several countries signal they wouldn't be sending teams to the event, originally planned for July. Several Olympic qualifiers had to be postponed as a result of the outbreak, putting many athletes at a disadvantage. And the increasing restrictions on global travel made even getting to the competition nearly impossible.
It was becoming increasingly difficult to see any way in which it could be held this year. The thing about the Olympics, it operates on so many different levels. I probably tend to think about the athletes and as a broadcaster on just two levels. You've got athletes around the world who are trying to train for something that they're not sure about whether it's going to be held or not, and they're all in lockdown, or many are in lockdown scenarios.
Japan had warned that putting off the Games put its billion-dollar budget at risk. Its chief organiser says he still hasn't worked out how much the delay will cost or who will pay.
I'm sorry about it, and I regret it. But in a way, it's also a sigh of relief. Prime Minister Abe and President Bach had a call on short notice, and it gave us a sense of direction. So that's a relief, but it doesn't solve everything. This could be a good pretext for us to go forward, and we can prepare for an even better Olympic and Paralympic Games than what we planned for this year.
3 Olympic Games have been cancelled before because of the world wars, but it's the first time in the Games' 124-year modern history that a competition's been delayed during peacetime. Japan's Prime Minister says when the event does go on, it will be proof that the world has overcome the virus, while the International Olympic Committee says it will leave the flame burning until then, as a symbol of commitment and hope. Alexi O'Brien, Al Jazeera.
Let's talk to our sports correspondent, Lee Wellings, who joins us live from the United Kingdom. And Lee, we were talking about this earlier, weren't we? This is a long time coming, but ultimately it was the only decision, really.
Well, yes, I think what's difficult and frightening and has everyone in its grip is the situation. The actual decision, with respect to all of the difficult logistics involved, isn't the most difficult you can imagine. Because actually what was difficult was getting closer and closer to July and people having this huge sense of uncertainty. Or indeed, the consideration, looking into that legal side and looking into insurance and who pays, that the Games might actually be cancelled. Now, that's the difficult thing. Postponement makes sense. And the more you talk about 2021 and the challenges that it poses and the disruption that it causes and to broadcasters and stakeholders, yeah, these are problems, and they're quite big problems, but they fall into perspective, don't they, alongside what's happening with coronavirus and the adaptations and changes that everybody needs to make.
Right. It seems like it is the right decision. Postponement certainly makes sense. How hard is it for athletes themselves to kind of recalibrate when they've been gearing up towards this once every 4 years event, and now they've got to delay things by a year?
Yeah, again, it's undoubtedly hard, and I'll have the same tone as my first answer there, because I have a huge amount of sympathy, we all do, with athletes whose chances of peaking and the 4-year cycle comes around. It's very meticulous how they prepare, you know that, but actually that has been disrupted, and there's that uncertainty of not knowing what events will be scheduled at what time, when they can resume training and so on. So I do have huge sympathy, we all do, for that. But on the other hand,
carry on.
Keeping them safe and well, Nick, that's the point. The uncertainty was what was causing the problems, the danger, the health and safety aspect. That comes first and second and third. And actually, if it does mean that the Games next year are imperfect in some way, I think we could say now, so be it. And I think that will be the tone increasingly as we move forward, that people are really happy that the games have actually been rescheduled.
Right, extraordinary times, but as you've already alluded to, it's no mean feat moving an event of this scale. Tell us more about some of the problems that the organisers will face with that.
Yeah. Well, the actual logistics, the big event that stands out is the World Athletics Championships, which are due to take place in August 2021 in Oregon. Now, it looks like that will have to move because the Olympics is most likely to take place then. Would it be moved forward, so there's a bit of a run-up, if you'll pardon the pun, into the Olympics? Or would that be delayed, and this is more likely, until 2022? Again, if it is, disruption, but really how much disruption in the wider scheme of things? Lots of other events, though, have been cancelled from 2020 that will be rescheduled in the summer of 2021. You think mainly football tournaments, don't you? The European Championship, Copa America. So actually, football's in the Olympics. That will pose a raft of problems for squeezing it in. But they will find a way because the world is fighting coronavirus and having to be very clever with how it fights. Scheduling sports events, it's difficult, but actually not insurmountable.
Yeah, the fight is the important thing. Lee, great. Thanks very much indeed. That's our sports correspondent, Lee Wellings. Well, Lani Belcher is a British canoeist, and she competed in the 2016 Summer Olympics, and she believes it is the right decision to postpone the Games.
Firstly, I think it was inevitable that it was going to happen, you know, with other major world sporting events being postponed or cancelled. And I definitely feel for the athletes. I think that a lot of uncertainty would have been in their minds, and that is difficult. But you know, they have their focus, and all athletes are extremely focused. So they would have just kept on training and doing everything they can. That if the games were going to happen, they'd be ready. But then also knowing in the back of their mind that it potentially could be postponed. I think that it's always going to be difficult. I definitely feel for the athletes and also the spectators that were going out to support family and friends in their countries. But I definitely feel that the IOC and the Prime Minister of Japan have made the right decision to postpone it and to safeguard the athletes and ultimately reduce the spread of the virus.